My name is Madison Chen Williams, and I suppose you could say I used to believe in fairy tales. I was the daughter-in-law in what many would consider a picture-perfect New England family, married to a successful Wall Street executive, living the American dream in all its gilded glory. But sometimes, the most beautiful facades hide the most rotten foundations, and today, I'm going to tell you exactly how I discovered that truth. At our family's Thanksgiving gathering, my sister-in-law Jessica pointed at my 3-year-old son and declared he didn't look like my husband David, calling him nothing more than a fatherless bastard child. Every relative's gaze instantly fell upon me, their eyes cutting through the warm autumn air like daggers. My mother-in-law Eleanor was trembling with rage, her hand holding the wineglass nearly losing its grip as burgundy liquid threatened to spill onto the pristine white tablecloth. I simply smiled. In front of everyone assembled around that grand mahogany table, I slowly reached into my handbag and withdrew a document, placing it deliberately on the polished wood surface. "Jessica, you're absolutely right," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent dining room. "Our family does indeed have a bastard child, but it's not my son." The paternity test report lay there, clinical and damning. Next to her son's name, the conclusion was crystal clear. Michael Williams, her own husband and my brother-in-law, was categorically excluded as the biological father. My mother-in-law's palm connected with Jessica's cheek with a resounding crack that echoed through the chandelier-lit room, leaving an immediate red welt that began to swell before our eyes. But my husband David, the man I had loved and trusted for 5 years, grabbed my wrist with a grip that promised bruises, his eyes cold as winter steel. "Madison," he said through gritted teeth, "when exactly did you start investigating them?" The crystal chandelier cast its warm glow over our Thanksgiving table, where turkey, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie filled the air with inviting aromas. Yet beneath these comforting scents lurked an atmosphere so tense you could cut it with the silver carving knife resting beside the golden brown bird. The Williams family's annual Thanksgiving gathering was nothing short of warfare disguised as tradition, and today, all weapons were aimed directly at me. "Madison, dear," Jessica Parker began, cradling her 1-year-old son Connor against her chest. She was married to my brother-in-law Michael Williams, and her voice carried that particular sweetness that always preceded venom. "Your little Andy has such beautiful blue eyes. I wonder who he takes after." The bustling conversation around our table fell silent as if someone had suddenly muted the world. "I've seen photographs of David from when he was young," she continued, her tone innocent but her words carefully calculated. "Brown eyes, just like Michael. This child—" She paused dramatically, allowing her implication to settle over the room like fog. "He really doesn't resemble anyone in the Williams family at all." I could feel the weight of 24 pairs of eyes boring into me, each gaze like a tiny probe attempting to pierce through my carefully maintained composure. Seated at the head of our grand dining table was my mother-in-law, Eleanor Williams, her expression darkening by the second. As the matriarch of this old-money New England dynasty, she valued nothing more than the Williams bloodline and the family's sterling reputation. My husband David sat beside me, merely furrowing his brow slightly as he cut a piece of turkey and placed it on my plate. "Don't pay her any attention," he murmured. "Just eat your dinner." His tone held no defense of me, only the weary irritation of someone who simply wanted to avoid conflict. After all, just the day before, I had caught him red-handed with his female client, exposing his affair to his company and effectively destroying his high-paying position at a prestigious Wall Street investment firm. The fallout had been so severe that even his brother Michael's down payment on a new Connecticut home had evaporated. My mother-in-law had called me a troublemaker in the family group chat, and David probably thought I was being unnecessarily dramatic. But why should I remain silent any longer? I looked at Jessica's face, which was practically radiating triumph and malicious satisfaction, and something inside me snapped. I smiled, and that smile must have been quite striking, because Jessica's expression faltered momentarily. I set down my sterling silver utensils, dabbed the corners of my mouth with my linen napkin, and slowly opened my Hermes Birkin bag. The bag had been David's attempt at an apology after I discovered he had accompanied his client to Planned Parenthood for an abortion procedure. "Madison," he had said at the time, "making this public won't benefit anyone. You admired this bag at Bergdorf Goodman for so long. Please, take it." He believed a handbag could purchase my silence, could somehow erase his betrayal and heal my wounds. He was gravely mistaken. Under the scrutinizing gaze of every person at that table, I withdrew a manila envelope from my bag. The sound it made hitting the white tablecloth was sharp as a gunshot, startling everyone present like a slap across each face. "Jessica," I said, looking directly at her increasingly pale complexion, enunciating each word with crystalline clarity. "You're absolutely correct." I paused, savoring the panic beginning to bloom in her eyes. "The Williams family does indeed have a bastard child." I reached forward and slid the document precisely toward Jessica and my mother-in-law. The bold black lettering at the top read like a judge's verdict, cold and absolute, *DNA paternity test report, LabCorp Genetics. Jessica's pupils contracted sharply. Eleanor's body convulsed, and her wineglass trembled in her grip, crimson liquid splashing onto the pristine Irish linen, spreading like an ominous bloodstain. Based on genetic analysis, Michael Williams is excluded as the biological father of Connor Parker Williams. Conclusion: Michael Williams is not the father of Connor Parker Williams. Time seemed suspended. The only sound was the collective intake of breath around the table. The expressions on my cousins' faces transformed from gleeful anticipation of my humiliation to shock, then to disbelief, before finally settling into unified stares directed at Jessica. These looks were 100 times more scorching and malicious than any that had been directed at me. "No!" Jessica's shriek pierced the silence. She lunged forward frantically, attempting to seize the report, but Eleanor moved with surprising speed. My mother-in-law snatched the document first, her hands adorned with her inherited sapphire rings trembling as blue veins bulged from the effort. She scanned the conclusion in mere seconds, and her body seemed to deflate as though every ounce of strength had been drained from her. She swayed dangerously, nearly collapsing. "Mom!" My brother-in-law Michael, who had been sitting like a wooden puppet throughout the evening, finally sprang into action, reaching out to steady her. "You shameless whore!" Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. In the next instant, she gathered all her remaining strength, channeling every bit of her fury and humiliation into a devastating slap across Jessica's face. The sound was crisp, clean, and absolutely satisfying. Jessica's entire body jerked from the impact, and 5 distinct finger marks immediately appeared on her pale cheek, swelling rapidly into an angry red welt. "What sins has the Williams family committed to deserve bringing someone like you into our midst?" Eleanor's curses grew increasingly venomous with each word. "You dare to cheat on my son. You dare to bring shame upon the Williams name." Jessica clutched her face, her hair disheveled, tears mixing with mucus streaming down her cheeks in complete humiliation. As I watched this scene unfold, I felt no satisfaction, only a growing sense that something wasn't quite right. Everything had proceeded too smoothly. Eleanor's reaction had been swift as a rehearsed performance. Her assault on Jessica seemed less like genuine maternal rage and more like a calculated display for the assembled relatives, designed to protect the Williams family reputation as quickly as possible. Just as I began to relax, thinking this drama would conclude with my vindication, I felt an iron grip clamp around my wrist, pressure so intense I could feel my bones grinding together. I whirled around in shock to meet David's glacial stare. His eyes held no relief at my exoneration, only fury and interrogation. "Madison, have you lost your mind?" His words emerged through clenched teeth. "Who authorized you to do this?" I sat stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. I had been publicly accused of bearing another man's child, I had provided evidence to defend myself, and my own husband was interrogating me like a criminal. "She attacked our son, and you're questioning me." I struggled against his grip, but his hand was like a steel manacle. His pressure increased until I thought my wrist might snap. "We'll discuss this at home." His eyes carried an unmistakable warning. Eleanor finished dealing with Jessica and immediately approached us. Her piercing gaze swept across my face before she forcefully separated David's hand from my wrist. "Enough. Family matters should not be aired in public. Everyone be quiet." The Thanksgiving dinner ended in complete disaster. Our relatives exchanged complex looks as they hurriedly departed, but their glances at me no longer held sympathy. Instead, I saw wariness and speculation. Eleanor and David flanked me as they escorted me into the oak-panelled study of the Westchester estate. The heavy wooden door slammed shut with finality, sealing us off from the outside world. I noticed that Michael followed like a soulless automaton pushed along by his mother. His vacant expression showed no anger, no sadness, which struck me as deeply abnormal. Inside the study, the atmosphere became positively arctic. Eleanor seated herself behind the antique mahogany desk that symbolized William's family power, her expression so dark it could have dripped poison. Her first words were not comfort for my ordeal, but accusation. "Who else knows about this report?" My heart sank progressively with each passing second. David paced beside me, irritably loosening his tie. He looked at me as though I were a stranger who had committed some unforgivable transgression. "I should have anticipated this," he said, his voice heavy with reproach. "You worked in risk management before you quit. Investigation is your instinct. But how could you turn those skills against your own family? Madison, what exactly are you trying to accomplish?" His accusatory tone cut through my heart like a blade. I had sacrificed my $300,000 annual salary at Goldman Sachs for this family. I had abandoned my promising career to become a stay-at-home mother, willingly caring for our child. The professional abilities I had once taken pride in were now being characterized as sinister weapons used against family members. I felt ice forming in my veins as the truth finally crystallized. I understood at last what was really happening here. They weren't angry about Jessica's affair. They were angry at me for exposing the first festering wound beneath this family's beautiful exterior. The study was engulfed in deathly silence. The scent of sandalwood mixed with the musty odor of ancient books created an atmosphere so oppressive it was difficult to breathe. I looked at these two people who should have been my closest family, my mother-in-law and the husband I had once loved deeply. Their faces at this moment were strange and repulsive. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. What am I trying to accomplish? I met David's accusatory gaze with a voice that, while quiet, rang with unmistakable authority. If I hadn't produced that report today, who would have been nailed to the pillory of shame? It would have been me. It would have been your son, Andy. In front of every relative, Jessica's lies would have destroyed my reputation and our son's legitimacy. At that moment, would any of you have spoken one word in our defense? I stared directly at David, enunciating each word. Would you have? David's Adam's apple bobbed as he avoided my gaze. He wouldn't have. He would have done exactly what he did earlier. Casually dismissed the situation with, "Don't pay her any attention, just eat your dinner." In his hierarchy of values, my dignity and our son's reputation ranked below his precious concept of family harmony. Eleanor, seated behind her mahogany throne, finally spoke. Her voice carried exhaustion but maintained that tone of unquestionable authority. "Madison, Mother knows you've been wronged, but we must consider the bigger picture in all matters." She began feeding me her twisted logic. "Michael has health issues. Jessica simply made an error in judgment that many women might make. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive for the sake of the Williams family reputation and your brother-in-law's future?" Her suggestion was so outrageous I nearly laughed out loud. "Forgive?" I raised my voice, my long-suppressed fury finally igniting. "How exactly should I forgive? By allowing my son to be called a bastard for the rest of his life? Eleanor, if it were David being humiliated today, would you be so magnanimous?" "Insolent!" Eleanor slammed her hand on the desk, causing the crystal paperweight to jump. "What kind of attitude is this? I am your mother-in-law." "That's not what I meant." David rubbed his temples in frustration, interrupting our confrontation. "This situation is complicated." "How complicated?" I pressed forward, staring into his evasive eyes. "Complicated enough that all of you could stand by and watch Jessica slander me without lifting a finger." David was backed into a corner, his face showing pain and internal struggle. He took a deep breath as if reaching some difficult decision, finally revealing part of the truth. "Michael was injured in college. It affected his fundamental capabilities." His voice was barely above a whisper, but I heard every word clearly. "He cannot father children." Thunder crashed in my brain, leaving me completely numb. I stood frozen, unable to move a muscle. Michael was infertile. So they all knew Jessica's son couldn't be Michael's. So everything at tonight's Thanksgiving dinner was an elaborate, orchestrated performance. I stared sharply at Eleanor. She sighed deeply, and for the first time, her austere features showed genuine maternal grief. "We Williams only have you two brothers. David is constantly busy with his career in New York, leaving the house cold and empty. Mother couldn't bear to watch Michael's line end without an heir." She began playing the sympathy card, attempting to soften me with family sentiment. "Jessica made a mistake, yes, but she was thinking of continuing the Williams legacy. We thought as long as the child carried the Williams name, what difference would it make who gave birth to him? So we allowed it." "Allowed it?" I seized on this crucial word, my blood turning to ice. "So you not only knew in advance, you might have actually participated in arranging it." A more terrifying thought invaded my mind unbidden. "Don't let your imagination run wild." David immediately denied my suspicion with suspicious vehemence. His overreaction only confirmed my growing suspicions. "We simply looked the other way. How could we predict that Jessica would be stupid enough to drag you into this mess?" I studied him, studying that handsome face now written with lies. I had once loved him so deeply I would have sacrificed everything for him. Now I felt only revulsion. They had permitted Jessica's affair and pregnancy, but what about me? What did my marriage and my son Andy represent to them? Were we merely pieces in their grand Williams family succession plan? Eleanor, noticing my increasingly disturbed expression, immediately recognized the danger. She softened her approach, walking toward me with an attempt to take my hand. I instinctively pulled away. Her hand hung awkwardly in mid-air. "Madison, you are David's wife. our legitimate daughter-in-law, and Andy is our eldest grandson. Mother understands this completely. Jessica's situation was handled poorly by us, and you were wronged. We acknowledge that." Her tone became gentle, like a kindly elder. "Let's end this matter here, shall we? Please don't investigate further. Behind closed doors, we're still family." Her words carried an unmistakable threat. Don't investigate further. Those 4 words rang in my mind like alarm bells. They were afraid. Afraid I might uncover more secrets they desperately wanted to keep buried. I lowered my head, allowing my long lashes to conceal the emotions in my eyes. "I understand, Eleanor," I said softly. I nodded, feigning compliance. But internally, I had erected an impenetrable wall around my heart. This family, this seemingly prestigious old money dynasty, was far more corrupt and rotten than I had ever imagined. I would not let this end here. Absolutely not. When we returned to our bedroom, David tried to embrace me from behind, but I sidestepped his advance. His arms froze in midair, hurt flashing across his features. "Madison, I just want to keep peace in the family." He sighed, attempting to explain his behavior. I ignored him completely, walking directly to the floor-to-ceiling window where I sat down, hugging my knees and burying my face in my arms. Through the cold glass, the snow-covered Westchester landscape stretched endlessly, reflecting my pale, numb expression. I had no desire to speak with him, not a single word. My mind churned with images of Jessica's sneering face and the cold indifference of Eleanor and David. I began retracing events, trying to understand when everything had started going wrong. Why had I commissioned that paternity test in the first place? Because before today's explosion, Jessica had subjected me to a year of systematic, relentless psychological warfare. Each of her comments was like a needle, quietly piercing my flesh, not lethal, but agonizingly painful. It all began a year ago when Jessica first brought her newborn son Connor to the Westchester estate. My son Andy was already 2 years old, bright and adorable. All our cousins gathered around Andy, praising his intelligence and charm. Jessica, holding her son Connor, smiled as she approached me. "Madison, look at my precious baby. These eyebrows, these eyes, he looks so much like Michael. Your Andy doesn't really resemble David, does he?" She delivered this observation in a joking tone. At the time, I didn't think much of it, assuming she was simply a new mother who saw perfection in her own child. I responded with a smile. Children grow so quickly. They change every day. But from that point forward, similar comments never ceased. During family gatherings, she would casually mention, "I've seen photographs of David from his childhood. He had brown eyes. Andy's blue eyes are so beautiful. I wonder whose genetics he inherited." She would private message me on Facebook with articles titled, "How to Tell If Your Child Is Really Yours," and "Shocking. These signs may mean your baby isn't your husband's," claiming she was sharing parenting knowledge. Once, when Andy was sick with fever, vomiting and diarrhea, I was frantic with worry. She actually went to Eleanor with gossip, suggesting the child's weak constitution might indicate genetic problems. She insinuated that either my genes were inferior or the source was questionable. After hearing her poison, Eleanor looked at me differently. The soups she prepared for me suddenly contained several mysterious expensive herbs supposedly able to strengthen bloodline. Drinking that bitter, strange-tasting broth made my stomach churn with nausea. The worst incident occurred 3 months ago. I was at the Greenwich Community Park with Andy, playing on the slides, when she deliberately led several acquaintance mothers in my direction. Her voice was loud enough for the entire park to hear. "Oh my, Madison, you really have it tough. David travels constantly for business in Manhattan, leaving you alone with the child. You're truly playing both father and mother roles. Women alone at home must maintain their virtue. They mustn't do anything that could cause misunderstandings." Her tone was shrill and filled with unconcealed malice. The surrounding mothers immediately cast strange looks in my direction. In that instant, I felt as though I had been stripped naked and thrown into a crowded street. All the humiliation, anger, and hurt crashed over me simultaneously. Andy seemed to sense the uncomfortable atmosphere. He gripped my sleeve tightly and asked quietly, "Mommy, why did that lady say those things about you?" I picked up my son and fled the park as though escaping a crime scene. That evening, looking at my haggard, dark-circled reflection in the mirror, I experienced my first profound self-doubt and panic. I began suffering from insomnia, lying awake night after night. I became suspicious and hypersensitive. David's slightest irritated glance could consume my thoughts for hours. During those dark nights, I would find myself uncontrollably staring at my sleeping son, examining his features, his nose, his mouth, desperately searching his face for resemblances to David. Then I would sink into even deeper self-recrimination and anguish. What was I questioning? Andy was the child I had carried for 10 months and nearly died bringing into the world. How could I let Jessica's poison affect me so profoundly? The final straw came 1 month ago. I had taken Andy to an upscale children's salon in Manhattan for a haircut when Jessica happened to be there as well. I was holding Andy in the chair while the stylist cut his hair. I stepped away briefly to take a phone call, and when I returned, I found Jessica crouched beside Andy, clutching a handful of his freshly cut hair. My heart plummeted. "What are you doing with Andy's hair?" I demanded sharply. She startled, then quickly regained her composure, smiling as she tossed the hair into the trash bin. "Madison, why are you so nervous? The child's hair fell on the floor, so I was just picking it up." She smiled with perfect innocence. But in that moment, I became completely clear about what was happening. This wasn't joking or casual provocation. This was deliberate, premeditated harm. What was her plan? She intended to use Andy's hair for a paternity test, then use a forged report, or one she was confident would show incorrect results, to completely destroy my life. I could no longer remain passive. Rather than wait for her to stab me in the back, I needed to prepare my defenses. That night, while David slept, I secretly clipped several strands of his hair. Then I found an opportunity to swab the inside of Jessica's son Connor's mouth with a cotton swab while he was sleeping. Taking samples from all three, I contacted my best friend from Harvard Business School, who worked at LabCorp, an authoritative genetic testing center in New York. I told her I needed 2 reports, one comparing David and Andy, another comparing Michael and Connor. I needed to understand exactly why Jessica felt so confident she could attack me with impunity. Now I finally understood. Her confidence didn't stem from suspecting me. It came from knowing her own secrets too well. She understood exactly where the Williams family's vulnerabilities lay. She knew they needed a false grandson to maintain their facade and supposed bloodline heritage. She had provided that product. Her attacks on me were simply misdirection, attempts to elevate her own status in the family by diminishing mine. How laughably pathetic it all was. The bedroom door creaked open. David entered, carrying a cup of warm milk. "Madison, drink some milk and get some rest." He placed the cup on the nightstand, his tone as gentle as if nothing had happened. Looking at him, I suddenly found him more disgusting than Jessica. Jessica's evil was displayed openly, while his was hidden beneath tender pretense, a deeper selfishness and cruelty. "David," I spoke with a voice hoarse from strain, "let's get divorced." "Divorced?" David's body went rigid, the gentle expression instantly disappearing from his face, replaced by shock and disbelief. "Madison, do you understand what you're saying?" "Perfectly clearly." I stood from the window seat and faced him directly, my voice steady. "I can no longer stay in this family." "Just because of today's events?" He frowned, his tone carrying mockery. "Because my mother criticized you. Madison, when did you become so fragile?" Looking at him, I found this man frighteningly unfamiliar. He completely failed to comprehend my pain, or rather, he simply didn't care. "David, our problems didn't begin today," I said. "When you accompanied your sweet little princess to Planned Parenthood for an abortion, when you were exposed and humiliated at the office, did you think about our family then?" His face cycled through shades of red and white as my words left him speechless. "That matter is finished. I apologized and made compensation," he bellowed in embarrassment. "Compensation?" I laughed until tears nearly came. "A black card and a platinum handbag constitute your compensation. David, what do you think I am? Some commodity you can buy off with money? Then what do you want?" "What do I want?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "I want to end this suffocating marriage. I refuse to let my son grow up in a family filled with lies, manipulation, and coldness." He fell silent. After a long moment, he approached me, softening his tone and attempting to grasp my hands. "Madison, stop this nonsense. I know you're still angry and that's my fault. Let's not divorce, all right? For Andy's sake, we should give each other another chance." He was using our child as a shield, his most practiced manipulation. The next day, David didn't go to the office. His high-paying position at Goldman Sachs had been destroyed by my own hand. He began performing the role of the perfect husband. He gave me an American Express Centurion card with no spending limit, saying, "You've suffered recently. Buy whatever you want, don't worry about the expense." He started returning home punctually, no longer having so many unavoidable business dinners. He would build Lego constructions with Andy, read Goodnight Moon bedtime stories, and even cook some of my favorite dishes. Eleanor also transformed her attitude. No longer showing me cold hostility, she had the household staff regularly deliver expensive organic blueberries, Alaskan king crab, and premium Wagyu beef. Taking my hands, she would speak earnestly about how I was a wonderful daughter-in-law to the Williams family, knowledgeable and reasonable, advising me not to lower myself to Jessica's level. They performed their good cop, bad cop routine with seamless coordination, believing these sugar-coated bullets would make me forget those sordid truths and continue being a docile, deceived Williams family matriarch. They thought money and false warmth could purchase my silence and stupidity. I accepted it all on the surface. I used his card to buy the most expensive clothes at Bergdorf Goodman and the most luxurious jewelry at Tiffany. I ate the king crab Eleanor sent and smiled gratefully at her. But internally, I was more alert than ever before. Their reactions were excessive. If they were merely trying to conceal Michael's infertility, they wouldn't need to compensate me so extravagantly. Something larger and more disgusting lurked beneath the surface. I had to uncover the truth. David told me he had received a response from a London investment company he had contacted previously. He planned to partner with friends to start his own business, expanding into European markets. He would be busier than ever, traveling more frequently. I nodded, displaying appropriate wifely behavior, and offered to help pack his luggage with seeming concern. He showed no suspicion. His face even displayed touching gratitude. In his expensive Toomey suitcase, I found nothing significant. But in the side compartment of his Louis Vuitton briefcase, I discovered a crumpled receipt. I carefully smoothed it out. It was a purchase confirmation from Pottery Barn Kids showing the buy of an $800 convertible crib and matching organic cotton bedding set. The purchase date was 6 months ago. My heartbeat skipped. Andy was already 3 years old, using the toddler bed we had chosen together at West Elm. He had long outgrown infant cradles. Moreover, we owned nothing from Pottery Barn Kids. For whom had David purchased this crib? A terrible thought grew like a venomous snake in my mind. I forced myself to remain calm, photographing the receipt carefully with my iPhone before replacing it exactly as found. I couldn't alert them to my suspicions. After David left on his business trip, my first action was accessing his MacBook and logging into his Tesla Model S GPS system. These account passwords were something he had voluntarily shared when we first married, wanting me to feel secure. How ironically trusting that seemed now. I opened the historical driving records and scrolled through them page by page. Soon, I discovered a pattern. Beginning 6 months ago, he had been making weekly trips to a high-end community in Greenwich, Connecticut that I had never visited, Round Hill. He would stay there for over 3 hours each time. He always went on weekday afternoons when he told me he was attending important board meetings or meeting potential investors. He had perfectly avoided any times when I might discover his activities. My fingers trembled slightly on the mouse as I noted that address. I had a powerful intuition that whatever lay behind that address contained David's second and most devastating secret. My suspicions, my unease, and my heart, wounded beyond repair by his betrayals, all urged me to go there and strip away his final mask. Just as I prepared to investigate that Greenwich community, I received a call from an unknown number. After hesitating, I answered. A hoarse, tearful female voice came through the phone. "Madison, it's me, Jessica." I paused in surprise. "Please, meet with me, I'm begging you." Her voice was filled with desperation and pleading. I remained silent for several seconds before responding. "Send me the address." 30 minutes later, I met Jessica at a secluded Starbucks. In just a few days, she had transformed completely. Her carefully applied MAC makeup was gone, replaced by undeniable exhaustion and sallow complexion. She wore a wrinkled Target t-shirt. Her hair was dull and lifeless, her eye sockets sunken, bearing no resemblance to the arrogant Williams family's second daughter-in-law I once knew. Upon seeing me, tears immediately began flowing down her cheeks. "Madison." I said nothing, simply observing her calmly. She sat across from me, gripping her Starbucks cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I hate you," she said through gritted teeth, her red-rimmed eyes glaring at me with pure venom. "You destroyed everything I had." "Did I?" I replied mildly. "Weren't these consequences of your own choices?" My response deflated her like a punctured balloon, and she collapsed inward. "Yes, it was my own stupidity," she began sobbing pitifully. "I thought having a son would secure my position in the Williams family. I thought Eleanor would protect me." I listened quietly without interruption. She told me that on Thanksgiving night, upon returning to her Greenwich apartment, she had been detained by Eleanor's private attorneys. The Williams family reclaimed all the Chanel bags and Cartier jewelry they had purchased for her and froze her bank accounts. The following day, Michael presented her with a prepared divorce agreement, demanding her signature. She would leave with absolutely nothing. When she refused to sign, Eleanor had security personnel remove her from the premises, forbidding her from seeing her son Connor again. "That old witch! She's utterly ruthless!" Jessica's voice dripped with poison. She placed all responsibility on my shoulders. She told everyone I was restless and ambitious, that I had acted independently to secure my position by cheating, She claimed she and Michael were innocent victims of my deception. I went to Michael, but he wouldn't even let me through his door. That useless waste of a man. Coward. I looked at her with complete emotional detachment. Pitiable people often possess detestable qualities. You asked to see me just to tell me this? I inquired. She wiped her tears and finally reached her main point. Madison, I know only you can help me now. Her eyes held both pleading and calculation. And only I can help you. Help me with what? Help you. See David and that old witch's true faces. Jessica then revealed the complete truth to me. She and Michael had been married for over a year without her becoming pregnant. Medical examinations at New York Presbyterian Hospital revealed the problem lay with Michael, azoospermia, meaning no sperm production. For Eleanor, who valued bloodline heritage above all else, this was devastating news. Jessica assumed her privileged life was ending, but then Eleanor approached her for a private conversation that would change her fate entirely. Eleanor proposed an audacious plan. Sperm donor, surrogacy. She said as long as the baby came from my body and we kept quiet, who would know? Michael's infertility was the Williams family's highest classified secret, absolutely never to be revealed. That man was also arranged entirely by Eleanor. Jessica's voice trembled. He was a distant cousin of a Williams family business partner, Yale graduate, reasonably handsome, excellent genetics. Most importantly, his family was poor, he was discreet, and he could be trusted to handle money and keep silent. Eleanor paid the man a substantial hush-money fee and promised Jessica significant compensation, assuring her that if she bore a son, she would be financially secure for life. Her position in the Williams family would be unshakable, potentially even more respected than mine as the elder daughter-in-law. I was so naive then, so fucking naive. Jessica covered her face, crying bitterly. I loved Michael, even though he's useless. I loved him. I wanted to stay in this family. I wanted to preserve my privileged life. So I agreed. I thought I had executed everything perfectly, thought I had produced the Williams family hero. Then why did you constantly provoke me, hinting at Andy's parentage? I asked, voicing my greatest confusion. Jessica raised her head, her expression complex. Partly jealousy, she laughed self-mockingly. I envied you. I envied your normal family, envied David's kindness toward you, envied your son being a legitimate child of marriage. Meanwhile, I lived daily in lies and fear, terrified my secret would be exposed. Seeing you and Andy made my eyes hurt. Additionally, she paused. It was Eleanor's instruction. My heart sank heavily. She said I needed to keep you destabilized. Only by creating trouble for you would everyone's attention focus on you rather than suspecting Connor and me. She said you were too smart, too independent, not as easily controlled as me. She needed a target to divert all potential risks. I was the knife in her hand. So that was it. All the psychological torture I had endured over the past year stemmed from my dear mother-in-law's careful manipulation. She had arranged her younger daughter-in-law's sperm donor pregnancy while simultaneously encouraging her to attack me, the elder daughter-in-law. She operated like a chess master, viewing both of us as expendable pieces on her board. Now that everything's exposed and I'm no longer useful, she discarded me like garbage. Jessica's face burned with resentment and injustice. I studied her, my emotions thoroughly mixed. While I didn't completely trust her account, I believed most of it was accurate. Do you have evidence? I asked. Yes. Her eyes brightened. WhatsApp chat records with Eleanor, bank transfer records, and A recording I secretly made of her instructing me how to conceive that man's child. She had kept insurance for self-protection. I looked at her, my plan crystallizing. "Send me all the evidence," I said. "If you want revenge against the Williams family, want to reclaim what you deserve, or even want to see your son again, listen to me." She studied my face, her expression shifting from doubt to struggle, finally settling on determination. "All right, Madison, I'll follow your lead." I gave her money to find temporary lodging. "Remember, from now on, don't contact anyone, wait for my signal." Leaving Starbucks, I sat in my Tesla reviewing the damning evidence Jessica had transmitted. Eleanor, David. Your comfortable days were ending, but I knew this wasn't sufficient. To deliver the killing blow, I needed the final puzzle piece. I started my car and set the navigation for that mysterious Greenwich community, Round Hill. The exclusive Round Hill community sat in Greenwich, Connecticut's most expensive district. With its serene environment and tight security, it housed Wall Street elite and old money families. I parked my Tesla at an inconspicuous Starbucks parking lot outside the community, providing a clear view of the main entrance. I didn't act immediately. I was waiting. Waiting for the man who had betrayed me yet attempted to pacify me with false tenderness and money. I sat in my car for an entire afternoon, from blazing sunshine to golden sunset. Just as I was losing patience, a familiar black Tesla Model S slowly entered my field of vision. It was David's car. He emerged wearing an impeccable Tom Ford suit, his face displaying a genuine, warm smile I had never seen before. This smile was completely different from his perfunctory responses to me or programmed interactions with Andy. This was truly relaxed, joyful, and filled with love. My heart felt squeezed by an invisible hand, the pain making it difficult to breathe. Then a woman appeared from within the community. She appeared to be my age, wearing a beautiful Zimmermann floral dress, her long hair flowing over her shoulders, her face glowing with happiness. She carried a swaddled infant in her arms. She approached David intimately, linking her arm through his and standing on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. David smiled down at her, gently adjusting the blanket that autumn wind had blown across the baby's face, his expression tender enough to melt stone. In that instant, my blood seemed to freeze entirely. I finally saw clearly. The baby was sleeping peacefully in that expensive Pottery Barn kids stroller I had only seen on a receipt. Man, woman, baby, a family of 3 in perfect harmony. And there I was, like a ridiculous clown, a complete fool, hiding in dark corners and spying on my husband's happiness with another woman. I picked up the Canon camera from the passenger seat and aimed it at them. I had to remain calm. I couldn't rush over there like some deranged woman to fight them physically. That would only serve their purposes. My hands trembled, but I steadied the lens and pressed the shutter. 1 photo, 2 photos, 3 photos. I captured David holding that infant, tenderly kissing the baby's forehead. I photographed that woman leaning against David's shoulder with a radiant smile. I captured all 3 of them walking together toward that warmly lit mansion. Each photograph was like a blade, repeatedly slicing through my heart. That evening, David returned very late, carrying the unfamiliar, cloying scent of Chanel No. 5 perfume. He seemed in excellent spirits, even bringing me a box of La Durée macarons I had once enjoyed. "Darling, you've had a difficult day." He approached for his usual embrace. Smelling his scent made my stomach churn with nausea. I suppressed my revulsion and casually sidestepped his advance. "What's wrong? Not feeling well?" he asked with apparent concern. Looking at his supremely hypocritical face, at the false tenderness in his eyes, I suddenly felt utterly exhausted. Nothing serious, just a bit tired, I replied calmly. He showed no suspicion, merely suggesting I rest early. I lay in bed with my back to him, sleepless through the night. I needed perfect timing, an opportunity to simultaneously expose all their ugly calculations and repulsive facades, nailing them to the pillory forever. I contacted my best friend, the Harvard classmate who had helped with the paternity test. After hearing my story, she exploded with fury over the phone. "Madison, just wait. I'm introducing you to our firm's best divorce attorney. He specializes in destroying these kinds of scumbags. We'll not only leave him penniless but completely destroy his reputation." The following day, I met attorney Sarah Johnson, whom my friend had recommended. She was an extremely capable woman with short hair and sharp eyes, experienced in handling numerous Wall Street elite divorce cases. I provided all my evidence, photographs of David's affair, leads on asset transfers, Jessica's recordings and WhatsApp conversations. After reviewing all materials, Attorney Johnson looked serious. "Mrs. Williams, this situation is more complex than you realize. Based on Jessica's testimony, your mother-in-law Eleanor likely knew about your husband's other family long ago." I was stunned. "What do you mean, Attorney Johnson?" "Think carefully," she guided my reasoning. "Why would your mother-in-law permit or even orchestrate Jessica's sperm donor plan? Because she desperately needed grandsons. But why would she risk bloodline confusion when she supposedly values hereditary integrity above all else? This contradicts her obsession with bloodline purity. Unless..." Attorney Johnson looked at me gravely, voicing a chilling hypothesis. "Unless she had already prepared Plan B for your husband, that outside woman and her child. You and your son Andy were Plan A. If you had given birth to a boy, everyone would have been delighted. You would be the Williams family hero. But if you had delivered a daughter..." I understood completely. If I had born a daughter, David's illegitimate son would have been immediately legitimized as the rightful Williams family heir, and Jessica's borrowed sperm son served as Eleanor's double insurance for the younger son's line. My son Andy, my marriage, everything I had sacrificed, were merely components in the Williams family's vast, disgusting succession plan. I was simply Plan A, a vessel for testing reproductive capability. I covered my mouth, trembling uncontrollably, retching repeatedly. So from my very first day as a Williams family member, I had been living within an enormous deception. "Mrs. Williams, are you all right?" Attorney Johnson offered me water. I drank the cold liquid, which helped calm me slightly. "Attorney Johnson." I raised my head, the weakness and pain in my eyes replaced by ice-cold, steel determination. "I don't just want a divorce, I want them to pay the most terrible price possible." I sent David a text message with simple, direct content. "We need to discuss divorce. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, at the estate. Have your mother, Michael, and Jessica there too." He replied almost instantly, "Madison, stop this nonsense. Whatever the issue, we can discuss it properly at home." I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, he sent another message. "Fine, I'll arrange it. Whatever you want we can negotiate, but don't hurt Andy." Looking at that final sentence, I laughed coldly. Even now, he was trying to use our child to manipulate me, playing the role of a devoted father. He thought I was merely making demands, seeking a larger financial settlement. He understood nothing about me. Or rather, he had never genuinely tried to understand me. Saturday morning, I arrived punctually at the Williams family estate living room in Westchester. I wore a black Saint Laurent dress with carefully applied but coldly striking makeup. Everyone had assembled in the living room. Eleanor still occupied her symbolic seat of power, her expression haughty as though she were about to preside over my trial. David sat beside her, his brow deeply furrowed, looking utterly exhausted. My brother-in-law Michael maintained his lost, hollow-eyed stare at the antique Persian carpet. Jessica had also come, standing in the living room corner like a condemned prisoner, afraid to meet anyone's gaze. The moment I entered, all eyes focused on me. "Madison, have you thought this through?" Eleanor spoke first, her tone icy. "Divorce benefits neither you nor the child. Without the Williams family, you are nothing." I ignored her completely, walking directly to the coffee table and placing my Hermes bag on its surface. David withdrew a document and pushed it toward me, a divorce agreement. "Madison, I know I've wronged you." His voice sounded sincere. "I'm willing to leave with nothing. The Westchester house and most of our assets will go to you. I only ask that you give me custody of Andy. Andy is the Williams family heir. He must remain with the Williams family." This was laughably hypocritical. I picked up the agreement and, without reading it, tore it in half. "David," I smiled brilliantly and mockingly, "did you forget that most of your assets were transferred 6 months ago through a Cayman Islands offshore trust to someone else's name?" His face immediately changed. His facade of sincerity and deep affection could no longer be maintained. How did you find out?" I ignored him and turned toward Eleanor in her position of authority. "Mother," I deliberately drew out the word, my tone dripping with sarcasm, "you've been so dedicated to Williams' family bloodline continuation. You prepared Plan A and Plan B. Why don't you introduce everyone to your most prized Plan C?" Eleanor's pupils contracted sharply. "What are you talking about?" "Am I talking nonsense?" My smile deepened. I pulled out my iPhone and pressed a number. "Attorney Johnson, please come in." As I finished speaking, the living room door opened. My attorney, Sarah Johnson, entered with a woman wearing a Zimmermann floral dress. That woman held a swaddled infant, the same mother and child I had seen outside the Greenwich Round Hill community. The room erupted, David's face drained of all color. He shot up from the sofa, pointing at me with trembling fingers, unable to speak. Eleanor looked as though she had been struck by lightning. She stood abruptly, pointing at me while shaking with rage. You fucking bitch!" The woman, holding her child, glanced timidly at David, then at Eleanor, before hiding behind Attorney Johnson. I gave them no time to react. I retrieved my MacBook Pro from my bag and connected it to the living room's prepared projection equipment. "Don't be hasty, everyone. Let's examine some interesting materials first." I pressed play. The white screen immediately displayed crystal-clear images, photographs of David and that woman embracing intimately at the Greenwich community entrance, him kissing the infant. Photo after photo, high definition, uncensored. "David, I presume Ms. Rebecca Martinez needs no introduction. Your sweetheart, your son's mother." David's body swayed, his face ashen. "And there's this." I switched files. The projector began playing an audio recording, Jessica's secretly recorded conversation with Eleanor. "Eleanor, I'm frightened. What if someone discovers us?" Jessica's timid voice. "Afraid of what? I'll protect you. Just focus on giving birth. Produce a son and you'll be the Williams family's greatest contributor. Madison, that barren bitch, I've been disgusted with her for ages." Eleanor's venomous, sharp voice. "But that man—" "Don't worry, I've paid him. He wouldn't dare speak. Consider yourself bitten by a mosquito. Get pregnant, give birth, and everything will be perfect." When the recording ended, the living room fell into deathly silence. Everyone stared at Eleanor's bloodless face. Plan A was my son Andy and me. I approached Eleanor, looking down at her from above. My voice wasn't loud, but each word struck her heart like a sledgehammer. Plan B was Jessica and her borrowed son. Plan C was your precious eldest son's outside woman Rebecca and her illegitimate child. Eleanor, for your precious Williams bloodline, you truly calculated every angle with meticulous care. Eleanor's lips trembled as she pointed at me, wanting to speak but unable to utter a word. Her eyes rolled back and her body collapsed softly onto the sofa. Mom! Grandmother! David and Michael simultaneously cried out, rushing to her side. The living room descended into chaos. After a brief panic, David suddenly charged at me like an enraged lion, red-eyed and attempting to seize my laptop and phone. Madison, you crazy woman, I'm gonna kill you. I was prepared. Attorney Johnson and her 2 assistants immediately intervened, restraining him firmly. I watched his frantic struggles with complete emotional detachment. I had told them I would make them pay the most terrible price possible. Today was merely the beginning. The Williams family had become complete chaos. Eleanor was rushed to Greenwich Hospital in critical condition. David raged around the living room like a caged beast, screaming, Madison, you've destroyed everything. Are you satisfied now? I looked at him with cold indifference, as though watching a performing clown. You rotted yourselves to the core. This has nothing to do with me. I paid no more attention to their hysteria. Under Attorney Johnson's escort, I took my packed luggage and my son Andy and left that suffocating home. I moved into a pre-arranged high-security luxury apartment on Manhattan's Upper East Side, safe from Williams family harassment. Andy sensed my transformation. Though somewhat unsettled, he mainly showed complete dependence on me. Mommy, will we live here from now on? He asked softly while hugging me. I kissed his forehead. Yes, this will be our new home. I expected David to choose compromise after cooling down, agreeing to an amicable divorce for the sake of William's family reputation. But I underestimated his shamelessness and cruelty. He began retaliating against me, freezing all my credit cards, including the American Express black card he had given me as compensation. He used all Williams' family connections to blacklist me with Wall Street companies, ensuring I couldn't find employment anywhere. He intended to financially destroy me. Then I received a summons from the Southern District of New York Federal Court. He had filed for divorce with demands I found both absurd and laughable. He sought sole custody of Andy. His justification claimed I was mentally unstable, had violent tendencies, and maliciously slandered elders while destroying family harmony. His evidence of my violent tendencies referred to an incident when I had emotionally smashed a Waterford crystal vase during an argument that occurred when I caught him accompanying his client to Planned Parenthood. He began spreading lies among my parents and friends, claiming I had become moody since quitting my job, suffering severe postpartum depression that had developed into paranoid delusions, always imagining he and his family were plotting against me. My parents and friends naturally didn't believe him, but these rumors buzzed around me like annoying flies. I remained calm. Since he chose to attack me using the most despicable methods, I no longer needed to show any past considerations. I anonymously provided some recordings and photographs to the New York Times, where my friend's husband worked as a senior social affairs reporter. Soon, an investigative article titled, "Behind Closed Doors, When Old Money Families Cross Ethical Lines for Legacy," began circulating online. Though all names were anonymized with terms like prominent Connecticut family and Wall Street executive, the detailed descriptions of surrogacy arrangements, extramarital affairs, and mother-in-law manipulation were richly detailed and clearly pointed. The article included heavily pixelated but still recognizable photographs. As a prominent Connecticut old money family and David being a notable Wall Street figure, internet users quickly identified the Wall Street executive as David Williams, heir to Williams Investment Group. Public opinion exploded. Old money scandal and Wall Street affair spread virally online. Williams Investment Group stock prices plummeted, losing nearly $50 million in 2 days. Countless clients called the Williams family inquiring about the situation, many threatening to withdraw investments. David was overwhelmed. He finally called me, immediately launching into a furious tirade. "Madison, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you determined to destroy the Williams family?" "David," I replied calmly, "I'm simply reclaiming what belongs to me. If you continue this madness, I guarantee you'll never see your son again," he threatened viciously. I hung up without further discussion, then immediately forwarded this threatening phone call recording to Attorney Johnson. This would become the most powerful courtroom evidence against him. Simultaneously, I scheduled comprehensive psychological evaluations at New York Presbyterian Hospital, obtaining authoritative reports confirming my complete mental health. I also contacted the mothers who had witnessed Jessica's public humiliation of me at Greenwich Community Park, asking them to testify on my behalf. "David, you thought power and lies could turn truth upside down. You were naively mistaken. I would show you that I was no longer a soft target for your manipulation. Every evil act you committed against me would become a blade turned against yourself." On the court date, New York's weather was overcast. I wore a crisp white theory pantsuit and entered the solemn federal courthouse. David and his legal team were already waiting. He had lost significant weight, his eye sockets sunken, his gaze filled with venomous hatred toward me. In the spectator section sat my brother-in-law Michael, looking even more hollow than before, like a walking corpse. Eleanor hadn't come. Reportedly, her stroke left her in poor condition, barely able to speak clearly. Court proceedings began. As expected, David's attorney portrayed me as a greedy, hysterical madwoman who would stop at nothing to secure a larger financial settlement. They submitted photographs of me smashing the Waterford vase and records of my substantial spending after quitting work, attempting to prove my emotional instability and extravagant spending. When David testified, he delivered a tearful performance, presenting himself as an innocent husband, deeply hurt by his wife yet struggling to maintain family and care for his child. "I admit my mistakes, but I've been working to make amends. I gave her the best life possible, thinking we could start fresh. But she won't give me the chance. She became suspicious and violent, investigating my family, leaking our private matters to media, destroying my career and our family. Your Honor, I'm desperate. I cannot let my son live in such a negative environment where he might be harmed by her at any time. Please, grant me custody of Andy." His performance was Oscar-worthy. Even some spectators who didn't know the full story looked at him sympathetically. My attorney, Sarah Johnson, remained completely calm. When our turn came to question David, Attorney Johnson stood with sharp eyes fixed on him. "Mr. Williams, you just testified that you've been working to make amends, giving my client the best life possible, correct?" "Yes," David answered without hesitation. "Then please explain." Attorney Johnson produced documents. "During this period when you claim to be making amends to my client, why did your Cayman Islands Trust Fund repeatedly transfer large living expenses to Ms. Rebecca Martinez at 13 Round Hill, Greenwich, even establishing a $50,000 education fund for her newborn son?" David's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." He began denying everything. "You don't know? Attorney Johnson smiled. "Then you should recognize this phone recording, Mr. Williams." The courtroom filled with David's threatening phone call. "I guarantee you'll never see your son again." That vicious threat echoed through the quiet courtroom, particularly jarring. David began trembling physically. The judge's frown deepened significantly. "Now, we call our next witness," Attorney Johnson announced. When the courtroom doors opened and everyone expected me or one of my friends to testify, an unexpected person entered. It was Jessica. She wore simple H&M clothing with no makeup, but her eyes showed unusual determination. When she approached the witness stand, David and Michael's faces became extremely ugly. What are you doing here?" Michael lost control for the first time, shouting before being warned by court officers. Jessica ignored them, looking directly at the judge. "Your Honor, I am Michael's former wife. I'm here today to reveal the truth." Over the following hour, Jessica detailed the complete sperm donor surrogacy plan. She submitted unedited WhatsApp conversations with Eleanor, bank transfer records, and that crucial recording. Crying, she told the judge, "This family is rotten to its core. What do they think women are? Breeding tools that can be bought and sold for continuing bloodlines. I admit my mistakes. I was vain and stupid beyond belief. I've paid the price for my errors. But I won't watch Madison and her child become the next me. I won't let Andy grow up in such a twisted, perverted, loveless environment." Her testimony was like a devastating bomb, completely destroying all of the Williams family's carefully constructed lies. It perfectly proved that I, Madison Chen Williams, had been living long-term in a family environment filled with deception, manipulation, and psychological abuse. Our attorney immediately pointed out that growing up in such a family, one that objectified women, disregarded children's rights, and held severely distorted values, would be psychologically devastating for a child. The Williams family's lies crumbled entirely. The judge looked at David and Michael with undisguised disapproval and disgust. During recess, I saw Michael rush toward Jessica as though to strike her, restrained by court officers in an utterly disgraceful display. David collapsed into his chair, his once handsome face now showing only ashen despair. He knew he had lost completely and devastatingly. I approached Jessica, and we looked at each other. These two women who had once fought each other to the death now shared a look of mutual understanding. "Thank you," I said quietly. She shook her head with a bitter smile. "I wasn't helping you. I was saving myself." The Southern District of New York Federal Court's final judgment came quickly with unsurprising results. My son Andy's custody was awarded to me. David, as the guilty party, was required to pay substantial monthly child support until Andy reached 18. More importantly, regarding marital property division, due to his extramarital affairs, malicious asset transfers, and threatening behavior toward me, the court ordered him to pay substantial financial compensation. I ultimately received far more than what he had originally promised in his divorce agreement. I won decisively and cleanly. The Williams family scandal was confirmed through this public trial. Williams Investment Group stock prices hit daily limits, losing 1/3 of its market value. Several major pension fund clients withdrew investments, and Citibank began calling in loans. The once glorious Williams family enterprise became precarious overnight. The family also began fragmenting internally. Cousins who had mocked me at Thanksgiving dinner now complained bitterly about Eleanor and David's actions, blaming them for destroying the entire family legacy for so-called bloodline continuation. Rebecca Martinez, the Plan C I had brought to the Williams estate, immediately turned against David when she saw his downfall and the family's ruin. Carrying her child, she protested daily at Williams Investment Group's Manhattan office building, demanding David honor his promises and provide her and the child with legitimate recognition, plus astronomical compensation. Yesterday's sweetheart became today's demanding creditor. Their mutual destruction became a complete laughingstock throughout the Upper East Side. David, overwhelmed and disheveled, actually had the audacity to approach me. He intercepted me outside my Manhattan apartment building, gaunt and red-eyed. "Madison, let's remarry," he pleaded hoarsely, grabbing my arm. "For Andy's sake, we should give each other a complete family. Everything was my fault. I'll change everything." He began using our child as a shield, his most familiar manipulation. I said nothing, simply pulling out my iPhone and calling building security. Watching him being escorted away by 2 security guards, disheveled and incredulous, I finally confirmed that the grave in my heart had been completely leveled. Later, I heard updates about the Williams family. After her paralyzing stroke, Eleanor remained in Greenwich Hospital, with only nurses for company. David was too overwhelmed with his own problems, and Michael had become a complete alcoholic. Ignoring the mother who had destroyed his life, Michael and Jessica finalized their divorce. He became increasingly morose and solitary, drinking heavily daily. Reportedly, he once nearly jumped from the George Washington Bridge while intoxicated. Jessica used the substantial compensation I helped her secure through legal channels to take her son Connor, whose parentage was so complicated, and leave New York for Los Angeles, starting a new life. Before departing, she sent me a brief text, "Take care." I replied with 2 words, "You too." I used my divorce settlement to establish a small hedge fund with my best Harvard friend, returning to the financial career I had abandoned for 3 years. Life finally returned to its proper trajectory. On a beautiful sunny weekend, I took Andy to Central Park to fly kites. Watching him run freely across the great lawn, pulling the kite string and laughing like silver bells, I felt unprecedented peace and happiness. I was no longer anyone's wife or anyone's daughter-in-law. I was simply Madison, Andy's mother. That was enough.